This is the review you asked for. A few weeks back, we asked you to ask us questions about the Harrier EV. And today, we answer all of them while telling you if the Harrier EV should be your pick under 30 lakh rupees. Time to get to it. If subtlety is your friend, the Harrier EV ticks the box in terms of design. You might be wondering about Tata's infamous problem of uneven panel gaps, but I'm happy to report it is fixed here. The lights, they work fine too, even after going through a couple of stints of heavy rain. Then there's the interior, clean just like the ICE car. The big difference? A new Samsung-sourced infotainment screen. The resolution is insane, the brightness is great, and adapting to different light conditions is quick as well. The UI is the same that we've seen on other Tata cars, but the lag is little to non-existent. Connecting to CarPlay is quick. The IRVM gets an integrated camera display, which in daylight is a little difficult to use due to reflections, but in low light conditions, especially at night, this is definitely a boon.
Tata has retained the 10.25-inch driver display, which is fine, but the font is still tiny. Yes, your SoC and range are big numbers, but for the rest, you need to take a closer look. Not advisable when you're driving a 2.5-ton vehicle. The AC controls are haptic, and even after trying to get used to them, I've found myself accidentally touching the wrong buttons. I just wish they'd put in physical controls. But the commanding driving position is unchanged, the plastics feel upmarket, and the light colors make the cabin feel roomier.
The battery pack is set in the floor, yes, but it does not eat into the cabin all that much. The second row is great for people of all frames. The driver's seat is set to someone who's 5'7", I'm 6'1", knee room is great, under-thigh support is decent, and headroom is great as well. You open up the panoramic sunroof and the cabin opens up even further. With the flat floor, seating 3 in the second row is a breeze. You also have extra cushioning for both ends of the bench and super comfortable headrests as well. But if you are sitting in the center, I'm sorry, you're gonna miss out on it. But to compensate on that, you have convenience features like two 65-watt Type-C fast chargers, a cubby hole, AC vents, and sun blinds.
All-wheel drive. 2 electric motors, 313 horsepower, 504 Newton meters of torque. Sounds insane, right?
But don't get your hopes too high. Power delivery is linear, which means by design, it doesn't feel super quick. You do have power modes to toggle through, with Eco being the dullest, followed by Normal, which is something I've been using in the city most times. It does take its own time to get to 100 kmph, but that's alright in most situations. For those quick overtakes I intend to do, I tend to switch into Sport mode, making those overtakes a lot quicker. Throttle response sharpens up and it's a lot easier to make those quick overtakes. And then you have Boost mode. Believe it or not, it is addictive. If you intend to own or you own a Harrier EV, Boost mode is the way to go. And by the way, Tata claims that the Harrier EV in Boost mode does 0 to 100 in 6.3 seconds. I think it's time to test it out. So we're now testing Tata's claim. We're putting the car in Boost mode. It says Boost mode activated. My draggy is set. We're keeping this as legit as possible. The highway is clearing up now. And we're gonna go for a run in 3, 2, 1. Okay, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. That was quick, but what is the actual claim? 6.9 seconds.
6.9 seconds. That's far from Tata's actual claim. But again, acceleration tests like these are taken in near perfect conditions. But in the real world, these numbers speak otherwise.
Which brings us to our first set of questions. What is real world range like and what are range figures that Tata claims?
460 to 490 kilometers of C75 range. In simple words, a near real world range figure 75% of customers can expect that's derived based on historic data of Tata's EVs.
On the dash today in the morning, in normal mode at 100%, I saw 400 kilometers of range. I'll put a picture somewhere here, which translates to real world range of approximately 360 to 370 kilometers. And in eco mode, that number will definitely go up even further.
Then there's the drivability. Frequency-selective dampers have entered the chat that use a clever valve inside the shock absorber that reacts differently based on how fast the suspension is moving. If you lost me at frequency, basically when you hit a sharp bump or a pothole, the valve opens, softening the suspension to keep things comfortable. Drive over longer undulations or take a corner, the valve resists more, stiffening the suspension to cut body roll and keep you stable.
At slow speeds, going through potholes feels as if you're brushing dust off your shoulders. High speed stability, rock solid. But throw the Harrier EV into a pothole too hot and it feels like you're thrown around in a mosh pit. Steering at slow speeds is fine, light and easy to maneuver, but high speed feels vague and a little too sketchy. Which is fine since this car will see the light of day in most cases with a family which is hauled around in the city with a mix of road trips thrown in there. Which brings us to our next set of questions. What is ground clearance like? 163 millimeters laden. Water weighting capacity? 600 millimeters. If I drain out the battery on an off-road trail, will I still have AC, lights, ignition and everything else until rescue comes? Depending on how far your rescue is, the 12-volt battery can take care of the basics, your hazards, fan, even the central locking. But air conditioning, you might have to give up some range. And if you don't have range, I'm sorry, the air conditioning won't work. Is it as fun as the BE6? The Mahindra BE6 is a different segment. That is rear-wheel drive versus this, which is all-wheel drive. The BE6 is tuned for sporty behavior and it is lighter. The Harrier EV on the flip side is heavier, bigger, tuned for more relaxed driving. So the answer to your question, no.
When we speak about Tata, tech comes hand in hand and the Harrier EV skims on none. 360-degree camera, ADAS, vehicle to load and an acoustics alert system that tells people you exist.
The 360-degree camera definitely comes in handy for an SUV of this size, especially in those super tight spots. But I'm not that big of a fan of its resolution in low light. It grains up, making it a little difficult to use and feels like it's from a Sony Ericsson back in 2010. ADAS brings us to another question. Does ADAS work for our Indian driving conditions? For the sake of science, I left the ADAS on and tested the Harrier EV out for a little bit. And I have to report that the ADAS definitely needs a little bit more calibration for our Indian conditions. The collision avoidance randomly brakes. A couple of times I was trying to get the car out of my parking, backing it out, and the car randomly braked even when there were no objects, no humans or not even static cars around. Lane keep assist keeps fighting back a little too much for my liking, and the sensors in general are far too sensitive, sending random dings and bongs in the cabin. Will tech fail randomly? I haven't had a chance to engage summon mode and hence I won't be able to comment on that, but the other basic functions like your screens, the drive selector, your audio system and other basics, they work just fine. The previous problem that the ICE car had where the hazards would randomly come on under slightly hard braking has been fixed on the Harrier EV as well. Does everything work? In terms of powertrain, no complaints at all. it works just fine. Even the drive modes, they work well. Regen, however, sometimes decides to not work. All it needs is a quick restart of the car and it works just fine. Haptic touch controls are a bit of a hit or miss. I've had to press the boot release button a number of times before it actually works. The screens are fine as well, but the startup sequences might take a little more than a second a few times randomly. Also, you really have to depress the brake pedal in order to choose either drive or go into reverse. And that shifter, that definitely needs to change, Tata. Charge time on AC and DC, Tata claims it takes 25% to 80 minutes on a 120 kilowatt-hour charger, which is rarer than finding a Ferrari in your neighborhood, and approximately an hour and some change on a 60 kilowatt charger, which is something you'd find most commonly around town. Coming to AC fast charging, the 7 kilowatt fast charger takes about 10.5 hours to charge the bigger 75 kilowatt hour battery pack, and the 15 amp socket, that might take up to 2 days. Is there a mandate to charge the Tata Harrier EV on an AC charger after every 4 DC fast charges for lifetime warranty? The service manual, I'm going to quickly put a picture here. The service manual does recommend you charging it on AC after a few DC charges just to protect the battery. However, there's no such statement in the entire service manual that says this will bar your warranty. Is it better than the BYD Atto 3 and the Mahindra XEV 9e in terms of quality and tactile buttons? We haven't spent much time with the BYD Atto 3 and hence we won't be able to comment on that front. But as compared to an XEV 9e, both of these cars get touch-based buttons, which I'm not a fan of. However, the XEV 9e's leather for the seats feels slightly more premium. But if you want to know more about it, our full-fledged comparo is coming very, very soon. So subscribe to PowerDrift if you don't want to miss it. The Harrier EV is definitely a step up over its ICE sibling. And while power might sound really intimidating, in reality, it's a lot more linear and usable. Space is great as well for all frames and 5. Range, it's decent too. If you are someone who's looking for a big capable SUV for the family and intends to hit the silent bandwagon, the Harrier EV can definitely be one of your picks. But what if you are someone who's looking for something in the same price bracket but wants an option? Comparo chahiye na? Coming very, very soon. Subscribe to PowerDrift. गाइस तुम लोग सब्सक्राइब क्यों नहीं करते रे पावरड्रिफ्ट को? क्या क्या तकलीफ क्या है? वो ऐसा बटन दबाने का पैसा लगता है क्या तुम लोग को? YouTube प्रीमियम मांगता है क्या? नहीं ना, तो करो ना। आके तुम लोग बाहर से वीडियो देख के जाएगा, लेकिन तुम लोग आके सब्सक्राइब नहीं करेगा ताकि यू विल गेट टू सी मोर ऑफ दिस कंटेंट। हम लोग भी कंफ्यूज होते हैं ना फिर कि पसंद आया नहीं आया भाई। Then these questions also arise. You come see feature videos and ask us where is